So hi, Mike.
Hey, AJ, thank you for doing this. I know this was impromptu, just so everyone knows watching. AJ and I were talking last week, and she was just departing for vacation, her sabbatical part of vacation where she disconnects. You were away for 2 weeks, and we were like, hey, what can we do? And that would serve our mutual contingency of readers and followers. And we said, let's do a webinar. Um, so thank you for doing this. I know you just returned from vacation yesterday, and I think we have some insightful stuff to share.
We do, and we didn't want to do just any webinar. We want to talk about how we actually work together. We get that question
That's
a
right.
lot. And let's just talk briefly about the agenda. So we are going to talk about our process, how we go from brainstorm to publication, just what that looks like in broad strokes. And then we're going to dig a little deeper into how we figure out what book to write next.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a fun process because you guys know Mike has about, I don't know how many more, about 20 more he wants to write.
Yeah. The cumulative is about 25. I actually have 35 to 40 concepts, 25 that I think are concrete, and we've chipped through 6 as of yesterday. Well, now the second pass manuscript is with you, but we're on the verge of 6. So yeah. 19 more for sure.
Then we're going to talk about this process that we do, which is reader feedback that we developed years ago and refined over the years to get the most out of advanced reader comments and how we use that to up-level the book. And then we're going to talk about how we get readers to take action, because you can write a book, you can write the best book possible, but if you don't get your readers to actually do it, then they don't really convert into being true ambassadors for your message and your brand. And a little bit about reader engagement, which it goes hand in hand with that. And then we are going to talk about my class coming up, Top 3 Book Workshop, which starts August 27th. So I want to let you guys, we'll spend a few minutes. I'm just going to give you a heads up about the details, and then we'll save about 10 for Q&A. Simple.
And I also want to acknowledge, AJ, everyone that's joining today. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for joining us, but thank you for what you're doing. I think the most impactful vehicle that exists is authoring books. If you want to be of service to a community, either through entertainment, fiction books, or through sharing knowledge, nonfiction, I think books are the best. If you think the per dollar value for on Amazon, someone buys your book for $17 or $18, you're providing with a wealth of knowledge. And I think our world is starving for excellent books from excellent authors. So just want to acknowledge that you're here, and our commitment is to deliver some good knowledge to you. So thank you.
Cool. And we should say how we don't have to tell the story of how we met, but we've been working together for 10 years since your very first book.
Yeah. And if I'm not trying to be too particular, but actually 11 years, I track it.
You do?
I do. Because listen, working with you, AJ, and you know this, but I want to say publicly, has been a life-changing experience for me. And just to set the context, and maybe this is how many people watching feel right now, is when I wrote my plan to write my first book, which was ultimately entitled The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, I was writing a book with no experience and just assumed you just start writing. Like, that's how you do it. You just type up until you have X number of pages. And I had this audacious belief that I could sell 1 million copies of this book because I believe so much in my content. And what I have come to discover in hindsight is that good or great ideas are not enough. And the execution of the book is absolutely critical and is the most overlooked component. I think some people just have a great idea. They write a book and say, here's something that will change people's lives. And from our own perspective, it does, but doesn't consider what the readers need, how they'll consume it, doesn't consider even the marketing. And I'm just so grateful that I at least had an inkling of that realization halfway through Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. I was writing it and I'm like, I tried to read my own book. I'm like, this is kind of shit. And I found AJ by happenstance and grace and serendipity. And you, AJ, helped me salvage a book and make something that was kind of rambling, and while resonating with me, not with others, to something that was cohesive and coherent. And that started our trajectory. And in the process, I've learned so much in this of making books that are really impactful, really insightful, and doing it in a deliberate way, um, in a deliberate process. So
Yeah.
just wanted to say thank you.
You're welcome. It's my great privilege. It's my favorite work relationship I have. I love the chemistry that we have in terms of understanding each other in our shorthand. But mostly, I love the process that happened over time of how we learned how to work together, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
So, whether or not you are going to work with a co writer or you're going to do it on your own, this is still, you can learn a lot from how we work together. So that first book, you had a draft written, but the second book, the Pumpkin Plan, you just had an idea.
Yeah. And yeah, I think the Pumpkin Plan honestly is my favorite book that we've collaborated on and that you've given me guidance on. Just so everyone knows, I've gone through AJ's training on a one-to-one basis. She's directly coached me and is a co-writer with me. And let's go through the process with Pumpkin Plan. So the Pumpkin Plan, I had a concept, and basically I have two beliefs. One is this concept of biomimicry, and there's this belief I have is that what happens in nature can be translated into the human experience, and often nature's got things figured out way before us. So I came to this concept of we can grow businesses healthy and organically, just like nature grows plants healthy and organically. And it happens to be colossal pumpkin farmers leverage this knowledge to even make it grow more explosively. And so I had these bullet points and ideas, and that's when we sat down and we started to go through the process. Maybe you can share from your perspective, what the process is and was for the Pumpkin Plan.
So for the Pumpkin Plan, we met a few times and brainstormed based on what you really felt would be valuable for your readers. And we do this thing where we talk to each other and I challenge you and you say, well, I think it's this. And I ask you questions and we try and get to a place of simplification. I wonder if actually if we could switch to the book you have coming out.
Yeah.
We switch to that?
Yeah, for sure. So my next book coming out is called Fix This Next. And basically the first thing I encourage everyone to do is the process is you have ideas. You need to get them out of your head and get them documented and extrapolate them. One technique that I use is the system called OneNote. It's from Microsoft. Evernote is the competing product. But I may even do a screen share here. But what I do is every time a thought comes to mind, I used to just sit on it and repeat it over and over and say, yeah, I got to include that and then forget it. I extract every idea. And I think how we start, AJ, is I'm throwing all these ideas out. You actually collaborate with me and say, here's some other ideas. And you give me perspective from the outside, which is really powerful. And then we start assimilating it and say, what is really relevant and what's not relevant.
Yeah.
The other component we do with the book too is every single time we have a core thesis. So everyone writing a book, I'd argue you must have a core argument you're making in the book. So our newest collaborative effort is to fix this next.
Yep.
And the core thesis is that the biggest challenge facing entrepreneurs, they don't know what their biggest challenge is. Or put in other words, is entrepreneurs are trying to put out all these different urgent and apparent issues, but are never necessarily focusing on the one that'll have the greatest impact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this arbitrary kind of fix everything mentality that feels right in the moment, but is not serving the business growth in the long term. So this book, we said, well, if the biggest challenge that my readers and community that I'm trying to serve is having is not knowing what to fix, we're going to write a book that says, here's the next thing to fix, hence the title, Fix This Next. And it's an entrepreneurial compass to pinpoint the vital need within the business that they need to work on. And,
yes.
and I had all these ideas. So that was the core thesis that we discussed. And I had all these ideas. And I sat down with you and then we started the process of brainstorming and really consolidating this.
Well, and even before that, it's a conversation. So Mike's further along. This is book 6, although we've written 7 together because Profit First had a second edition that was revised and expanded. So technically this is book 7, but it's the 6th concept.
Yep.
And it was born of, and this is something that happens to all of you. So it was born of conversations that Mike had at speaking engagements with clients, at masterminds, just chatting with friends who are business owners. okay, is it, do I, because Mike has three very successful books, Profit First, The Pumpkin Plan, and Clockwork. One is about profit, one is about sales, and one is focused on order or systemization. And so what do I focus on first? That was a question you heard a lot. So we had,
Yeah.
so you know, that's something you brought up. So we talk about what book should you write next. It always comes down to what are you hearing from readers about what they need, and not being sure exactly what to focus on next was something that they needed. And we started talking, okay, well, what could that be? And it became clear that you needed a tool. And
Right.
so a lot of this book was that the time was so much book development time, I think more than almost on any other book,
Yeah.
in trying to get this. So we spend a lot of time. We go to, once we know which book we think we're going to do, we'll schedule a retreat. And we've yet to pick a really good place. So if anybody has a recommendation, if anyone has a recommendation for somewhere within an hour's drive of Mike's, of Boonton, then
Or Nyack. Yeah.
yeah. We'll go for like 2 days where we don't have anybody bother us and just throw stuff out. Just throw stuff out, brainstorm, eat, throw stuff out, brainstorm, sleep, throw stuff out. It's actually really great. We have to get a way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great process. I encourage everyone that's watching right now is if you have a book concept or idea, regardless of what state it's at, is to start talking publicly about it. And this is kind of contrary to what you think is if you start sharing your intellectual property, your concepts or your story publicly, maybe someone else can steal it, that concept. And here's what I found, even back to Profit First, AJ, I started talking about profit first in my very first book. And in Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, there's a section, a small section that talks about the profit first account. And subsequently it became an article in the Wall Street Journal that actually collaborated with, that you helped me produce. And it became extremely popular. But even after that, no one grasped the concept at a book level. And I don't know necessarily if it's because people respect intellectual property and don't impede on it, or what I believe is the truth is you have to speak until you're blue in the face about a concept before people really absorb it and start to believe in it. So one great thing you have as an author is you can start speaking about your book before you have it, sharing the concepts, and you'll get an immediate response. So speak at your public library, speak to the community, maybe the clubs at the colleges. Like there's entrepreneur clubs that I can speak to. And if you're speaking about women's rights, there's women's organizations, target your community at these different venues and start becoming very vocal about your ideas. What I found is you get this immediate feedback. And it's another way to facilitate the brainstorming and call out the stuff that's great and the stuff that maybe feels great, but is not.
Yeah, and it's to test the content. You could be doing a webinar like this on our retreat. Mike would go into his different communities and post questions that we wanted answers to, and we get real-time answers. So that's the first step, is we do a lot of brainstorming. Then we come up with a proposal for the publisher, because Mike's publisher is Penguin Random House Portfolio. And that editor will then give us some feedback if we need to tweak the concept. But once we have the deal, the outline is pretty much set. And so we get to work. And the first thing we do is talk about what types of things does Mike need to collect and download from his brain that can be used, and which types of stories do we need to gather through interviews. And we just begin collecting data for everything. This time I sent you that massive to-do list. It had about 100 questions on it.
Yeah.
Right. So I was prompting you.
Yeah.
And from there, we can see how much content we have and how much content needs to be generated by you, how much we need to research, and how much needs to be gathered through interview, right?
Yes. So there's a couple elements I want to add or expound on is telling stories. I think it was Les Brown who says, never tell a story without a point and never give a point without telling a story. So those two things need to work in simpatico in your book. So one thing as you're brainstorming your different ideas is how are you going to back it with a story? One thing I do, and AJ, you instill this in me, is we got to prove out these ideas. So if I have an idea, I got to show the proof behind it. So there's a lot of testing that goes on behind the scenes. The great thing is if you're doing these speaking events, you can invite people that attend your speaking event to test out concepts.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely test it out. The other thing was interesting. You just mentioned the mainstream publisher. So I self-published 3 books, and I've now mainstream published 3 books. Um, here's what is interesting, and we learned this from Will. Oh, his last name slips my mind at the moment, but he was a
Will Weiser.
Will Weiser from Penguin. He was their chief marketing officer for the imprint of Portfolio. Subsequently, has gone on his own. And he said, if you're going to write a book, pitch it to a mainstream publisher, because the worst case is you're not going to get the deal and you're going to then go self-publishing. He goes, the other case is you'll get the deal and then you have the right to decide, is it better self-publish or mainstream? But no matter what, you're going to prepare a proposal on how this book is going to be structured. You're going to write out the entire outline for the book and the marketing plan. And he goes, regardless of the route you're going to take, you're going to need this.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanted to point out that with my first book, with The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, I was convinced I'd sell 1 million copies. We've sold now well over 100,000, didn't get 1 million. And I was convinced that a mainstream publisher would pick it up. And I was basically laughed out of the room from any publisher I approached and bookstores. So, but we at least had some structure in the place that could play at that level, and it served me to move the books.
Yeah. And we still do it. We have to do it for our editor.
We still, right. So even with Fix This Next, now, listen, I'm in a blessed position. Once you get, just like any other industry, once you start getting momentum, and like Profit First has been such a good seller for them, and so is Pumpkin Plan, quite frankly, and so is Clockwork now. Like Fix This Next, I didn't have to write a 20-page proposal, which if you go mainstream, that's the normal proposal length. So I didn't have to worry about the marketing component because I know how to market. We still had to go through the entire outline, the entire proposal, and structure the book. They want to know, rightfully so, and just like you should, that they're going to have a book that has meaty, effective content.
Right. So when we start gathering content, we'll start building it out. So then once we have enough to go on, I'll start building out a chapter based on content that Mike's provided, or content that he's found, or an interview we've done, or even something I found. And I'll send a rough over to him, and it won't even be done. It'll have notes that I have in there, and comments for Mike, and things I need him to do, and so forth. So it becomes a working document that we toss back and forth. And we'll do that with several chapters, and then turn them into the publisher or to the editor, and mostly they just want to know, are you actually writing, and is it the same book you were contracted to write?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I saw Bradley's note. I red wine. Yes, I'm enjoying a little bit of red as we go. It's a little later here than normal. My wife is waiting for me upstairs with dinner, so I want to wet my whistle. So I think one interesting perspective I've had too when it comes to writing a book is the time it takes. I do not believe in these, book in 80 days or 90 days, whatever the pledge is now that you can do. The typical book that AJ, you and I collaborate on is a 5 to maybe 3-year project. There is conceptual thought. So the next book I'm working on after Fix This Next, right, which isn't coming out until April 2020. I've already started the next book. It may be a marketing book. We'll have to see if Penguin accepts it. Is a concept I've been working on for about 9 years already and speaking on it often. There's a book about hiring that I want to write that I've been spending and researching now for about 3 years and reading other authors and what they're writing. Dream Manager I read recently, an amazing book, just assembling these concepts. So I want you to know that the book writing and preparation process isn't necessarily an overnight process. Yes, there's outlets that argue you can do that. It is the lottery winner that writes a good book that way. It is, I don't know if it's a labor of love, but it is a labor of love, and it's a long-term commitment. And I want you to know, if you're going to write a book, put your soul into it, put every ounce of your knowledge put into it. The books are not about it could be, but it's not about making a marketing piece so someone buys from you. That's me, not a book. That's a glorified marketing piece. This is really something where you put every ounce of your effort into it. And with Fix This Next, AJ, we've gone through multiple iterations on multiple chapters. We've submitted the manuscript as a final manuscript, the first pass. I call it the first pass manuscript to the editor at Penguin. Kaushik, who's our editor, came back, and it's a whole massive shift again. And now we're at second pass manuscript that I finished. You're now taking a tackle at it. It's going to go back to the publisher in about 2 weeks, and there's going to be a third pass manuscript, which we're refining down. But every time the book elevates, I think the first manuscript was a good book. I think the second manuscript is a freaking good book. And I know by the third manuscript, with enough effort, it's going to be an extraordinary book. And books that sell are only extraordinary books. You see, when you launch your book and you market it like crazy, you can make sales, but you can only make individual sales. The person that you're communicating with, you can convince them to buy your book. But the real growth of this is that person believes in the book so much that they tell 10 other people, and they start to carry the momentum without you marketing it at all. And the only way to do that is to have a book that really delivers, is really extraordinary.
Right. And that's how you've been able to build your career and
Yeah.
and your fan base. I know you don't like the word fan, but I still think it's a fan base.
Yeah, I call it readership. The only reason I don't like the word fan is I don't like the idea of a superior, inferior. And I'm not even saying that's what a fan is. I just don't like the concept of holding someone up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
I like that concept of perspective, that as I write my books, as we collaborate on the books, as we're writing these together, that we're coming with a perspective that is distinct and unique, and there's something to learn there. I just don't like, people saying, "Oh,
Yeah, but you do have fans.
yes."
So I wanna just redirect us to the process so that we can, because we go through that iteration process, just the two of us, and then once we get where we feel good about a chapter, then we put it into I put it into a master doc, and then once we've completed all of the chapters, then we have a complete master doc. And we use that we'll refine it a little bit more back and forth together, exchanging the same doc. Mostly it's a lot of, how can we make this simpler? How can we make this more usable? How can we make this more encouraging? How can we make this more doable? Does it work? Have we explained it? Have we left too many assumptions hanging out there? All this stuff. We have checklists that we go through, and we send it then to our editor, who gives us comments back. So where we are with Fix This Next right now, and this is, by the way, if you're self-publishing, you can emulate this process. You don't have to this isn't something that you only do when you go to a publisher. I want to just interject here, because something I teach in my workshop is that we have been blessed with amazing technology that allows us to self-publish and do amazing things. The problem is that people have tossed out everything that traditional publishing knows we need to do, such as a quality editing process and thorough editing process. Most people have no idea how much editing needs to happen and how many people need to be involved. And so you end up with an inferior product when you have this great idea and it's not supported by the traditional process, which you can then do yourself. The students in my class are actually following that, even the ones who are self-publishing, they're doing it. So they're enforcing the rigor. Do you know what I mean?
There's I think it's called a half-life rule that applies to editing, which is very apparently clear to me now. It wasn't before. Is that when you write a manuscript, say, for example, you have 500 typos, it's probably realistic, maybe it's 1,000, or errors of some sort, improper grammar, use of punctuation, that in the first pass, about half of those things will get caught. So now let's go from 1,000 down to 500. On the second pass, half will get caught. So now you're at 250. On the third pass, half, now you're down 125. You keep on halving your way there. So it requires many passes to really nail it. And ultimately, even with the most thorough checks, since it's kind of half-life, you'll never get every single one. There'll still be one or two here and there. This scrutiny in making sure that stuff is fixed is so critical because of first perceptions. Have you ever read a book where within like the first chapter or paragraph, there's like a glaring typos and errors? What's your perception of the quality of the book? For at least me, it degrades significantly. I'm like, oh, they didn't care. They didn't edit it. Maybe they didn't care about what they were writing. And that first perception, that first impression changes my consumption of the book. Yeah. So if you are self-publishing, just to AJ's point, spend the time and the effort to get a second party. This is key. I tried to do a lot of editing myself. I'm I'm speaking my own language. I fill in the blanks. I don't even see it. I'm invisible to the errors. So definitely, I would encourage you to seek out a second party to do,
Well,
line editing, proofreading, stuff like that.
so it's if you're self-publishing, you want a developmental editor. That's what we have in our editor at Penguin, and that's actually what I do for authors. So even though I'm co-writing this with Mike, I also need one. I get, even established writers, all writers need, whether they're newbies or experienced writers, need a developmental editor. That's the first editor. The second editor is your copy editor, and the third is a proofreader, and they should all be different people. They should not be the same person.
Exactly. Hey,
So
one question, AJ, I just hit me now. I should have asked this in the beginning because I'm super curious. I'm just curious if you could put in the chat, just put the percentage of how far along you are in your book. If you're brand new and you're looking to get started, could you just put 0%? If your manuscript is done and your book is out there, it's 100%. Just give me a sense. I'm just super curious because that would help. I should have asked that earlier. Okay, so a lot of newbies I'm seeing.
newbies.
Awesome.
Oh, don't put a frowny by
Yeah,
zero.
no frowny faces.
No frown. Oh, third book. Awesome. Ideas. Okay. Oh, this is great. Oh, hey, Colleen, blog post. That's a lot of good content you can mine.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of zeros. That's kudos to you all for getting started early and learning this stuff. That's the way to do it. I see a couple people far along. Okay, that I should have asked that earlier. So thanks for sharing that.
So, once we get to that phase where we get edits back, then Mike and I will meet together and come out with a game plan. So Mike just finished his part A of the game plan, and then he tagged out and I tagged back in today.
And that's the literal words we use. I'm like, tag you're it. And
yes, tag you're it. And so I have a to-do list. So to give you some perspective, because I know as an editor what needs to happen, and we know what we need from a book. We have immutable laws that we set for the book. We have expectations. We have reader expectations that we know we have to conform to, because Mike has a readership that has, expects certain things from each of his books. My to-do list that I shared with Mike today, it probably had about 21 things on it. And, they're not like little things you can tick off. So the editing process is an intense process, but it's a really necessary process. And then it will go back to our editor, and we'll probably have a little bit left to do after that, but then it will move on to what's called production, and that's copy edit and then proofread, and that's pretty much cake. I mean, that's just the easy part.
I want to touch on the immutable laws because that may be a new term to many people here. Yet I would argue it's probably one of the most important elements of writing a book. Immutable laws are the guiding values you're using for your book, or the sensation or feeling or emotion you want your reader to experience as they go through the book. So one immutable law, AJ, we have that are probably our most popular is arm over the shoulder, we call it. And what we mean is that as people read the book, that they feel me as the author has my arm over their shoulder and are going through this experience with them and sharing, friendly, supportive advice. And what's so interesting is, the natural feel to write a book sometimes is like, hey, we're speaking one to a community, like, you all should do this, and here's what I suggest for our community. But this book is a very one-to-one feel. So at every line, we're looking and saying, is it me speaking to the reader, or is it speaking to a group? Because if it's a group, we don't have arm over the shoulder speaking to the reader. Is the tonality that we're sitting in a bar enjoying a glass of wine and really getting into the essence of this, or is this more like a professor who's dictating knowledge? That's not what we want. So I challenge everyone here, even before you start writing your book, start defining these rules or guidelines of the sensations or emotions and feelings, that the values that are going to dictate your book. And as you finish this outline phase and then start writing your book, you'll see your writing style will be adjusted accordingly.
Yeah, and that's something I also teach in the class, is how to set those immutable laws. It can be daunting to think about writing to those immutable laws. So I think an important distinction is to always be aware of them, but know that most of that actually gets handled in edit. And so sometimes when we lay down a first draft, we expect to have all this right. And not sometimes, all the time. All my students, no matter what I say, still want to have that all in the first draft. But it comes actually through in edits. So that's when you refine it to make sure you've hit all the right notes. And another immutable law that I think actually everyone should have, that we have, is it doable?
Right. Right. Is it actionable? Can you do it?
And not just actionable, but is it possible for the reader to actually do the thing that you're asking them to do? You know, I think that's crucial. And I would say that a good 50% of our time together, Mike, is spent trying to assess whether that's actually working.
That's exactly right. It's funny. I just reached over there because I corkboard behind my computer here. Do I write the book? I just want to show you. This is a system. Like this isn't like nonsense. Like this, we're not just espousing. This is above my desk, and this is even a checklist in consideration of the book. So, is this book a mandatory read? Like, here's like even the principles and rules I have for even if a book should even be written. So, I don't know. I just felt compelled to show this that this is stuff that I live by, and I would argue a portion of my success is directly attributed to having immutable laws, having a clear set of what defines a successful book, even before I start writing it. I think many people just go right to the writing phase and skip these absolutely critical elements we're talking about now. We just say, I have a book in me, I'm going to write it, and then wah, wah, wah. So, yeah.
I'm mindful of the time. I really do want to talk
Yeah.
about the reader feedback system.
Oh, yeah.
This is something you guys can do that we did it. So we perfected this over the years.
Yeah.
So what we do is Mike identifies people who are the ideal reader of the book we're going to write. And he gets them to agree to read the book in advance. So this is an early draft. It's actually not even, it's probably second draft, hasn't been through everything with our editor yet. And so it's pretty raw. You have to trust the people that you send.
Yeah.
And you don't want your mom and other people who are just going to say nice things and put gold stars and do that sort of thing. You want people who are going to scrutinize it. And the key to doing it is to have at least 10 people. We had what, 35?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So we wanted 25. We ended up with 35. I asked 50. So even though people are excited about reviewing your book, we put very tight parameters around how quickly and what's expected of them. And a portion, in our case, went from 50 down to 35 will actually comply. So just a heads up on that.
Yeah. And so, but you want at least 10 because the point of the exercise is to look for patterns. So,
common threads.
Yeah. If you don't have enough people, then you take it too seriously. When so-and-so says, I didn't get it, and so-and-so says, I loved it, you put too much weight on both of those things. So you need to have pattern. You need to have enough people. And then we give very specific instructions, and we have a series of questions. We try not to do more than 9 or 10 of them, and have them send it back. Then Mike and I will go through and we'll see, what do we notice? What, maybe not using the same verbiage, what are people commenting on that's similar? What challenges are they experiencing? What questions do they have? And what's really resonating with them, so that we can maybe even beef that up a little bit. For example, I'll give you an example. It turned out that this compass that Mike created and perfected is actually doable in 15 minutes or less.
Right.
We didn't know it was going to be that fast.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But it turns out that that's true. And we told a story of an associate of yours that it worked in 15 minutes. And he's not the only one, but the story was in the book. And it, hands down, so many people went nutso over this one story. So we realized, what does that tell us? Does it tell us that we need to make the story longer? No. It tells us that we need to emphasize the speed factor.
Yeah.
And that we need to show them how to do it in 15 minutes.
Right.
So that gave us a clue that was something people want and need. Sometimes you have to, really think, what does that mean? But it's an incredibly valuable process, and y'all can do it. You don't need to have a publisher. You can do this yourself. You just have to keep it, tight constraints on it, and take those sort of outlier comments with a grain of salt, the people who give you all sorts of ideas that don't even pertain to your book. And then, fortunately for newbies, You won't have to deal with Mike's problem, which is people who do get a little fanboy and fangirl and are a little overly positive. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Which is the danger, right? So as your book becomes more and more popular, you'll get people that will just give you accolades just to give you accolades, and then you can start believing that. So be forewarned. That's a danger. One additional thing we do, AJ, is a call to action,
yeah,
and not many authors do this. And if you're in the nonfiction space, I don't know if this necessarily applies to the fiction space per se, but I think it could. Is if you're in the nonfiction space, business, self-help, health, that very specific and concrete calls to action that are very doable and easy is, I think, the opportunity of all future books.
yeah,
Um, we use a technique called front loading, and I think I really encourage you to do this. There was a study done by somebody, and what the research found out is that the majority of people that buy books don't read them. Right? You get the book, and I have to read that one day, and it sits on the desk. The second thing is a smaller group, but the largest of the small group reads about 2 chapters before they abandon the book, and it keeps on going this way. Very few people make it through the entirety of the book. Therefore, the more actionable the book is in the front, the more likely they're to see results. So front load it to the point where AJ and I spent a lot of time identifying titles, and like profit first is actually the action to take in the title, knowing that if the majority of people are just going to put the book on their desk, how do we have a title that's so compelling they can take action on it and see results? Now, that's
yeah.
not doable in every scenario, but it is definitely doable in the first few chapters. So I really encourage you to front load your book with very actionable tasks where they'll see results.
And I would also argue that people have a tendency to throw action steps at the end of a chapter, and they're just sort of ideas about exercises people could do. But nobody has any time. So, when you say journal for an hour every day, who's going to do that? 1 or 2 people. You have to think about action steps that people can actually do quickly. Under 15 is great, under 30 is still doable, and that's fine. You have to test it, make sure that's actually going to work. But more importantly, you have to be able to say, this is why I want you to do it, because this is where it's going to get you if you do. And it's imperative that you complete this because XYZ. And if you don't, XYZ. Because otherwise, it's just a bulleted list of stuff you might do if you had like free 2 weeks, which
Right.
who has it. So it's important that you are careful about your action steps and you make a plea to the reader as please do this. I've simplified it as much as I can, and here's why it's so imperative that you do it. And then you're going to get more people taking action. And if they take action, then now they're actually going to finish reading that book. Then they're actually going to do the thing. And that's why you're doing this. You want them to do the thing. You want them to take their profit first. You want them to fix their next problem. Those are the things. Whatever your message is, you want them to get it and apply it to their lives, to their relationships, to their businesses, whatever you're focused on. And they aren't going to do it if you haven't taken great care to consider them. And that's one of the tenets that I teach is reader first, about really paying close attention to what your reader needs, what they want, and also being respectful of their time. Because it's not the $18.95 or the $22.95 that they spend to buy your book that is the value you're trying to give. The value you're trying to give them is it commensurate to their time, the time they're spending to read your words.
So I want to make a little shift here, AJ, and I just want to ask again our audience here is I think there's 2 types of people who write books, and I'm not putting more significance in one or the other, but I think it is a choice. I think I chose, and you remember this day, I choose to be an author. And what I mean by that is someone that devotes their life to changing other people's lives through books, that I write books, but I market the books, I present the books. I'm all in about being of service to my community through the books, and the books being the kind of the mainstay. I think that's one group is I'm an author. There's another group that's I'm a writer. I write books. And writing books is where we produce the content, but not necessarily devote our career to that task. So I'm just curious, what category did you put you in? Are you an author or a book writer? And hopefully I bifurcated that. So Emily, I'm with you. So just if you guys could put in the chat, I'm just want to get a sense. Are you looking to write a book? David, writer, awesome. Or are you looking to be an author, meaning devote yourself um, to shifting the audience to do something that will you'll devote a career to? Author. Okay, so I'm seeing more slant toward author. And this was interesting. Author, shifting them. Yep. Okay, so the majority author, hands down. Advocate, Zach. I know Zach Sarr very well. Author. Yeah. So the distinction to Sandy, what I see is a writer is someone who writes a book. That's the goal, is to write a great book or a good book. An author is someone that writes a great book or a good book, but it devotes their career to it. So I guess, let me say this again. In both cases, a writer or an author write great books. An author is a career path. Someone who is an advocate for their book, is promoting it, is doing keynote speaking on it. That's the career I've chosen. Or there's writers, people that write great books, but that's it.
You don't have to be a keynote speaker to be an author. You just need to be committed to your message and your readership. Because I think that, we talked about the process to publication. Now, we aren't going to talk marketing on this call, but, part of what we do and what you do is work for opportunities to engage with readers before publication and after publication.
Right.
And that's the difference between being someone who wrote a book to up-level their business or as a better business card, or just to have because people are asking for it, whatever the reason, and someone who is engaging and connecting with readers and continuing to provide value to them.
Yeah.
Where it's a relationship. It's not a one-sided deal.
And to Emily's comment, an author I do see as someone that typically produces more books, that there's they call it backlist in the industry, but books that build on books, that they complement, have series and stuff like that. The reason I asked is I want to jump into the top three. We promised that we'd share a few details, AJ, about your program.
And we're going to keep it short because we still want to do questions.
And we'll do Q&A. So why don't you share top three? I would argue is really designed for authors and people that want to write amazing books, but authors is what I define it as. So do you mind just sharing what that is, and then we'll go into Q&A?
Sure. You can learn more about it. I think Laura will put a link in the chat. Laura Stone is my right hand and is an accountability coach for Top 3. I created it because I believe that people can write great books and we can do better. And the thing is that there wasn't a lot of education out there for people who really do want to be in service to the reader. How do you do that? How do you actually develop a book that's in true service to the reader and then allows you to amplify your message and realize the vision that you have for your business or your brand? And so I created a course that's based on what I do with Mike, what I did with other clients when I was a ghostwriter, and tested it for 3 years with one-on-one clients. And now we're in our third iteration, Top 3 Book Workshop. It's a 16-week live workshop. We meet twice a week on Zoom, and it includes one-on-ones with me, one-on-ones with an accountability coach throughout the course, because I think if you're going to write and if you're going to develop, write, and edit a book, that I call it Top 3 because it's to write a book that somebody claims is one of their top 3 books. Why else would we do this? There's so much. We just went through a process that that takes us years sometimes. Why would you do it if you don't want it to be that special book on someone's nightstand that they will not get rid of, that they recommend to everybody they know? So I teach people, I broke down how to actually do that. And then we do it in workshops so that there are conversations, feedback, one-on-one and group feedback. And it's a community that I'm really proud of. It's a small community, but one of the things that I love about it is the first drafts that I was getting out of the class were so stellar. And I don't expect first drafts to be stellar. Ours wasn't. Ours was not. But I was really impressed because people had taken the time to follow the teaching, up level, take everything to as the highest level possible of service. And it changed their messages, changed their outlines, changed their focus. So we teach, it's a 16-week course. We start August 27th. I'm really excited, and we still have spots left. And if you want to hear more about it, because I want to be mindful of time and do a quick Q&A before Mike has to eat.
Finish my wine, yeah.
Um, oh, and I do, yes, I see Laura say Mike shows up to our class. Yes, Mike is so great. He comes to talk about marketing and building a business around your book. And we have about 10 other guest experts that also come in and talk. Um, so that the link is right there for Laura. And I also want to say that I'm doing 20-minute calls. You can schedule them if you want to talk about and see if it's a good fit for you, because it's not, it's not always a good fit.
Yeah, so I just want to give a little testimony to it, and then let's do Q&A. If you want to write a great book, particularly if you are pursuing the author career, there's no one I can recommend more highly than AJ Harper. And I have referred my closest friends and confidants and colleagues to AJ. So John Briggs went through the course, Cindy Thomason. I just introduced Deborah Cassera to you just yesterday. She wants to write a book. And I don't say that lightly. I my life has changed, AJ, honestly, because of the input, direction, and the collaborative work we've done together. I am living the life that I feel serves my life's mission to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. And there's nothing more important than books to do that. And I know alone I wouldn't do it. So I told everyone earlier, I had the privilege of one-on-one work with AJ. Um, I was lucky because I was right place, right time, and I stuck my talents into AJ and was able to get that. You have the opportunity to get your talents into AJ and join this workshop. I believe in it that much. I believe it will change your life. So just wanted to share that. And yeah, that's it. That's it. Let's do some Q&A.
Yeah, let's do some Q&A. The last thing I just want to say about the class is I didn't say that half of our class is about the business of publishing. So I just want to make that clear, because most people don't know what they don't know about how to get their book published. And so we go over everything. So that's something I wanted to point out. I think you guys can see the links now. I hope
Yeah.
so. I think it accidentally was sent to panelists and not attendees, but I believe I got that right now.
Yep. Yep.
All right,
Yep.
hey Joan. Hey Joan, it's Joan. How are you, Joan? Can you let me know if you got it now, Joan? That would be great. Oh, thank you, Bradley. Um, so hey Laura, you're sending messages to panelists but not attendees. Just want to let you know if you want to repeat any of your messages. Okay.
And I just posted Laura's email address. So if you have questions, you want to dig in deeper, make sure it's a perfect fit for you, email Laura at ajharper.com. So I just
Yeah,
posted that there.
I love to talk about your book. For even if you're not going to do the class, schedule 20 minutes with me, because it's the one time I do this. I can do this class twice a year, and I'll do 20-minute calls till all hours because I love hearing about your book. So schedule it. Hi, Joan. So let's do questions. If anybody have any, we would like to keep them focused on the development, writing, and editing process. And if you do have questions about marketing, we can give you another link.
I like Bradley's comment about my clean shaven. Yeah, this beard grew out over the last like 9 months, and I've been partly lazy, partly my wife likes it, so it stays. So you will see just by visiting the website alone, AJ's website alone, you'll see what a beardless Mike looks like.
All right, any questions? First step, really first step. Is that David?
David Shirley, yeah.
Truly. The first step, what do you think, Mike? I know what mine
Yeah.
is.
So the first step for me is always ideation. And I don't know if I can share my screen, and I don't even know if it's really even worth it. But I use OneNote, and I encourage David you to consider some kind of capture platform. OneNote, Evernote. There's other programs out there. I wake up in the middle of the night or in the morning and say, "Oh, that could be a book. Oh, that could be an idea." Like I said, I have probably 45, 50 ideas out there. We're going to consolidate it down to these 25 that I think they are. But start off with the general concept. Then the next stage I take is I start filling it with just ideas. So I got a great hypothesis or idea. The biggest challenge facing entrepreneurs, they don't know what their biggest challenge is. But then the next question is, do I have information? Can I collect knowledge that supports that? That's where I get started.
I think it starts from, do you have inside of you something you that could change the world? So I say this. I know that sounds like a lot, but I believe it. I think you have an idea that if only people knew that your take on that, the idea, the way that you view something pertaining to your industry or your life or the world, that if only we knew that, things would change. That's the thing you need to write about.
Yeah.
Your unique take on something that we don't know. I mean, it doesn't even have to be an original concept, but it's your unique take on that concept. And so I always ask people, what do you know that no one else knows? And if I understood that, my life would be different. Start there.
Tyler asks, he says, Mike, you tell amazing stories. Thank you for saying that. As someone who's great at giving action steps and sharing info but struggles with storytelling, what's your best tip to better storytelling? Great question, Tyler. Um, I went to an improv class, and they told us this concept of yes and it's the essence of storytelling is to continue to build on the prior sentence or the prior concept and just keep on going in. So when I interview people, so part of it is interviewing people. I just interviewed Jesse Cole again. He's the founder of Savannah Bananas yesterday. Found an amazing story buried in there. And the key is to extract this. I keep on using the yes and. So Jesse Cole, the founder of Savannah Bananas, this amazing baseball team, used the FTN, the Fix This Next model 6 months ago. They started using it. I said, what have you discovered? And he said, oh, we discovered this and that. I said, yeah, and what else? And I kept on saying yes anding. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he goes, oh, we discovered recently in our most current iteration, our challenge is that the stadium for the Savannah Bananas can only seat 4,300 people. That's our maximum capacity of people that we can impact. So he's in this model, I call it the impact level, but the ability to be transformational people. He says, I'm stuck here unless I break outside the confines of the stadium, the physical stadium. He goes, this has me thinking, how can I expand beyond it? And I started leafing through all my voicemails and stuff just by chance. But this question was sitting in my mind from the Fix This Next model. And he goes, there was a message from Ron Howard's company. Ron Howard, the producer of like Arrested Development and like every movie you can ever think of in modern times that was amazing, had called upon the Savannah Bananas in consideration of a sitcom. And I would have never discovered that story if I didn't keep on saying yes and. So Tyler, I think that's a good tool to use in your interviews of people, but also as you write, just write all the yes ands, keep on building that story, and then you go through this consolidation where you pull out the great elements that are impactful and can change people's lives.
And if you're telling your own story, my advice would be limit the setup. So you don't need a lot. We don't need a lot of details. Try to limit it to 1 or 2 sentences, and then jump right into the turning point part of the story. And the most of your story should be about the conflict, right? So, what is the problem, and how is it being portrayed, and are the stakes high enough? Sometimes we forget in a story what's at stake for the person in the story, whether it's you or someone that you're telling the story about. We forget to do that sometimes. What is going to happen if this doesn't go this person's way, or it doesn't go your way, because that has a reader engaged. And then you need a resolution. And I also would say you want to extract the dialogue from the story, but not all of it. So, for example, you want that pivotal thing that someone said, or that pivotal realization you had, but not all the dialogue. So you want to take us into the story by giving us the details of the surroundings and so forth of the turning point moment in the scope of your story. So, and then give us a little bit of juicy details, but don't spend paragraph on setup. And we're at stakes.
So I like William Collins' comment that I favor Rick Grimes, a very handsome man from The Walking Dead. So thank you for the compliment. I saw that Emily, no, it was not Emily. She has a great question too, but there was a question from Diane Gilson, AJ, saying she's a technical book and it's about using popular software, requires frequent updates, but she doesn't want to commit to having to do updates for the rest of her life. What's her ideas? So one strategy that comes right to mind, and AJ, and I suspect you have additional, is this concept of the For Dummies series. You can be the person writing the book and repeating and refreshing it, or you have an opportunity to capture uh, the audience and have other authors write. So we did this with Profit First. Profit First is kind of the pinnacle defining book on the Profit First concept, but we realized that Profit First plays out differently for dentists than it would chiropractors. And what I found is what I call supplemental authors. I call them derivative or supplemental authors, but authors who are writing a variant of Profit First specific for their community. I wonder, Diane, if there's an opportunity here for you to own the category of that software, but now have other authors do the refreshed or derivative versions of that.
And I think if you don't want to go that route, you could also have a user area where people come in to share their own updates and ideas, where it's readership driven. And so you're not actually, generating that content, and it's a way for readers to engage with other readers and with you. We missed a question, Mike, and it's from, is it Justine or Justin? It's hard for me to see the name. It says, I have a book that could be applicable to a lot of audiences. How do I choose who to focus the content on? I have a good answer for that.
Lay it down.
Who do you want to hang out with for the next 5 years?
Because that's who you're going to be hanging out with.
Yeah, because you have to love those people. And so who are you going to want to serve with passion consistently, day in and day out, except maybe when you take your 4-week vacation? Because it's not about the strategy is really about who you can give your heart to for that long, because it's a process of not just developing, writing, editing, publishing, marketing, but it's the ongoing readership engagement that matters more than you can possibly imagine. So you have to be willing to love an audience that can serve you or can serve you back. But also, Mike will say this, I can know what you're going to say. You also have to be able to make sure you can find those people. So, right? Am I right?
Bingo.
Yeah. So it's not just people you want to hang with, but it's people that congregate in groups, etc., where you can access them. Can you market to them? Can you talk to them? Can you find them? So I think if you need to find the blend there, the people you most want to hang with, and are those people accessible?
Emily asked, how do you do call to action for an inspirational book? I read a book called Body for Life. And one thing that was interesting, it said, post your pictures of your progress. So you can use social media and stuff for people to make declarations, their commitments, and show progress. That's one way of doing it. Another question. Do you have anything else there?
I just wanted to say I love that you like that comment. Is it Justin or Justine? Who can I give my heart to? Oh, yeah. Thank you. I feel like my people are here. All right. Yes. Next question.
So I think it's Ela said, I'm hesitant to ask people to share info that I can use in the book. So there's a secret to asking people to be interviewed and include them in your books. Do you interview over the phone, or what are the formats? AJ?
So I think all right, this is not even an exaggeration. I've done probably close to 1,000 interviews over the last 14 years. So I'm going to tell you this. Almost no one will say no if you give them these parameters. You would like 20 minutes of their time, and you are specific in what you want to talk to them about. I think a lot of people say, I'm writing a book about X and I want to interview you for it. Well, you need to decide in advance what teaching point you want to talk about with them. And by teaching point, I mean, we have a core message for the book, but we also have teaching points along the way, right? That become chapters or sections in chapters. And these are truths. These are truths that that support that core message and help you deliver on a promise to your readers. So you have to isolate those teaching points. So when Mike and I do it, it's almost like that kindergarten match game. This word goes with this picture. So it's like, okay, Mike has a teaching point about this. Who do we know that can talk about that had either a good outcome because they believe that teaching point to be true and they acted on it, or can they be a cautionary tale because they didn't? And so if the first step is to say, I would like to interview you about this specific not my whole book concept. Because then those become wandering interviews. And the thing is, people do not feel, they want to give you their best interview. So you have to give them the chance. Otherwise, they get frustrated because they want to give you their best. So tell them exactly what it is. Provide the questions in advance if they want them over email so they can think about it, because not everybody processes really well on the spot. Tell them you need 20 minutes and that you're going to record the call. Record the call using your phone or 1-800-free conference call or whatever system you want to use. Book 45 minutes on your calendar, but tell them 20. And then at the 15-minute mark, say, I want to be respectful of your time. I can go longer. Would you have to? And you know what, Mike, how many times do people say, oh, I'm good?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you block off 45 minutes. And the thing you want to do is right up front, you say, can I get the spelling of your name? Can I get the spelling of your business?
Right.
You make it clear, if I use this story in the book, you don't promise you will. I will send you a copy of the final draft for you to check for accuracy and sign off on. And I have never once in probably even more than 1,000 interviews had anyone pull out by following that simple system.
It's that simple. AJ, we've hit time. Replay link. One final question. Will there be a replay link?
We will send, Laura's going to send out, she has everybody's email, and we'll send the replay link. And if you guys have follow-up questions, please let me know, because I would be very happy to, on my own Facebook page, answer these questions in a video. I just want to make sure, Laura, can you grab if there's anything else? Oh, there was one from Emily. So I want to answer Emily's question, Laura, if you can grab it, and I will. I think it had to do with a call to action.
I think it was sent, AJ, I believe that was sent to the panelists, as we can't quite see it here in the chat.
Okay. Emily, can you email Laura with the question, and I am going to answer it on my Facebook.
And everyone, I'm just posting the link. Just a reminder, check out the link for AJ's training. I promise you, if you are devoted to writing a great book or being an author, this class will change your life. That's my commitment. And I hope to see you there. So I post the link there too. Hopefully you got tons of value out of today's call. And if you feel compelled to check out what AJ is doing or not, I just want you to know we both are just wishing you tremendous success in authors. The world is starving for great books. Starving. So
Yes.
Go do it, my friends.
Thanks, guys.
See y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.